the entrenched interest and failed bitter voices in Washington will do everything in their power to try and stop us from this righteous cause, to try to stop all of you. They will lie, they will obstruct, they will spread their hatred and their prejudice. But we will not back down from doing what is right. Because as the Bible tells us, we know that the truth will prevail.
Welcome back to The World Over. That was President Donald Trump speaking this week at the Faith and Freedom Coalition's Road to Majority Conference here in D.C. As we've seen, religious liberty has been front and center, as has the pro-life cause and the agenda of the Trump administration. My next guest is the former director of the Christian Coalition and founder and current chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He's a tireless defender of religious liberty, and he's here to discuss it all tonight. Ralph Reed, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Raymond. Good to be here.
When you heard the president there talk about protecting the life issue, protection of religious liberty, you think what and why did he decide, do you think, to address your group?
Well, I think, first of all, of how fortunate and how blessed we are to have him in the White House instead of what the alternative was. Can you imagine if we were dealing with Hillary Clinton's selection to replace Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court? Can you imagine what she would have done on religious freedom after she gave the basket of deplorable speech and said that anybody didn't share her view on the life issue was, quote, irredeemable? So that's the first thing, is I really do, and I mean this genuinely. I just thought how blessed we are.
And how are your members responding? Because there was a lot of, during the campaign, there were great fissures in the Christian community.
There were.
People who had personal reservations about the president, some of his pronouncements, the infamous Access Hollywood tape, and those sorts of things. Has that healed?
No, I think it's way beyond that. It's not just healed. I think people are thrilled that he has kept his word and his bond with the faith community. You know, Raymond, he came to this same conference a year ago, and it was shortly after he had released the list of 21 jurists from whom he said he would choose a nominee if elected. Gorsuch was on that list. He got up at that same conference. He stood behind the same podium, and he said, if you elect me president, I'm going to choose from this list, and I'm going to put pro-life judges on the courts. Now, Raymond, I've worked on 10 presidential campaigns. I've been involved in the pro-family and pro-life movement for over 30 years. No nominee of either party had ever gone to the faith community and said, I will put pro-life judges. They had used euphemisms.
Well, usually you say constitutionalists. You really
originalists.
That doesn't become a litmus
strict constructionists.
But he has a penchant for going out.
And he kept his word on Mexico City. You know, not only reinstating it, but expanding it on the Religious Freedom Executive Order, on the Gorsuch nomination, time and time again. And he has proven to be a real friend of this community. I'll share one other quick anecdote. Last year after he spoke, we were walking down the hall after he came off the stage. This was our 8th conference. This was the 5th time he had appeared.
Wow.
He came as a private citizen. He's been a friend of this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
wow.
This was his 5th time. He appeared twice as 3 times as a private citizen, once as a candidate, and then now as leader of the free world. But last year, as he walked off the stage, we were walking down the hall, taking him back to his car, and he turned to me and he said, if I make it, I'm not going to forget the people who helped get me there. And I said, if you do, you'll be the first. Wow. And he said, you know what? It's sad, but it's true.
And so he has it.
And he remembered. Raymond, it was 81% of the evangelical vote. It was about, as I recall, about 54% of the Catholic vote, the faithful Catholic vote, even higher than that, high 50s. He won the entire Catholic vote.
He did.
And the first Republican nominee to do so since George W. Bush, and he has not forgotten those people.
There's something you mentioned that I need to pick up on. You said he appeared at your conference as a private citizen for a number of times. How does a man who is not known for his religiosity or his personal piety, what do you think drove him there? Is it just a sense that religious faith and people of faith are important in a republic like this? Or do you think it was something personal, something he's looking, a void he's looking to fill in his life somehow?
I think it was a mixture of both. I don't want to speak for either the president or the first lady, but I know people in the faith community who are close to both of them, and they have prayed with them and they have ministered to them, and there is a story there. I think it's most appropriate to let them tell that story in their way and in their time.
Yeah.
I can tell you that when the First Lady appeared at the rally, and I think it was Melbourne, Florida, after the president was elected, I think it was one of the first ones he did after he was elected, and remember, she went to the podium.
And led with the Our Father.
That was all she did.
Right.
And I think there's a story there, but I think also he was, at every point, the first time he came was 2011, he was looking at running for president. I mean, he was not there just,
he
didn't just
He didn't come
drop
to the desserts.
in. And I think he, to his credit, as a candidate and now as president, Raymond, in ways that people who are supposed to be brilliant practitioners of politics never got, and he somehow instinctively and viscerally understood. These are my folks. I'm their friend. They're my friend. They're salt of the earth. They're part of what's right about America. I am sick and tired of tens of millions of these people marching to the polls and voting for candidates promising to advance their values, and then the minute those guys get in, they treat them like they're lepers. And I'm not going to let it happen. And it's one of the most amazing stories of my entire political career.
I agree with you.
That this man, thrice married, a billionaire from Manhattan, not somebody who's known as Cotton Mather, became such a friend.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, I want to go through some of the criticism that we're hearing, even in the Christian and certainly in the Catholic community. When he signed that executive order on religious liberty, you and I were both there on May 4th.
On the National Day of Prayer, I signed, as I promised I would, a new executive action to protect religious liberty in America, including protecting the rights of groups like yours, the Little Sisters of the Poor. Thank you. Stand up, the Little Sisters of the Poor.
The president was open to all kinds of criticism. Russell Moore said, grateful for the executive order's affirmation of the need to protect religious freedom, much, much more needed, especially from Congress. Robbie George, the religious liberty executive order is meaningless, no substantive protections for conscience, a betrayal. Ivanka and Jared won, we lost. Ryan Anderson at the Heritage Foundation, today's executive order is woefully inadequate. What Donald Trump issued today is rather weak. Your take on it, Ralph Reed, is it?
Yeah, I'm familiar with those criticisms, and I would say that while I have great respect for all those gentlemen, and they're all good friends, and I think very highly of them, I don't think they're correct about this case, and I'll tell you why. Yeah. I saw earlier drafts. First of all, there was an early draft, a February draft that was leaked. I also saw subsequent drafts, including one just a few days before the executive order was released.
Right.
And it was certainly true that earlier drafts, including the one that's appeared in public, the February one, was more comprehensive, and it included things like the rights of chaplains in the military and things like that, and it included things like the contraception mandate at HHS. It was a little bit, shall we say, more granular on the Johnson Amendment. That's all true. But it is also true that the executive order was just as comprehensive. Instead of including every single one of those in the global executive order, the president directed the Attorney General of the United States, who is as good a friend of religious freedom as I know in government, Jeff Sessions, to direct every other cabinet department and agency to take proactive steps to protect the conscience rights and religious freedoms of government employees and citizens. And we've already seen at Health and Human Services, we have a draft of a rule that will do exactly that with respect to the contraception mandate and other mandates under Obamacare. I think you're going to see more of that at the Pentagon.
Which allows a religious exception. The carve-out is much wider.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants a religious exemption, as an organization, as a ministry, they can simply ask for it and they'll get it.
I think we should not get hung up on process, and we should stay focused on policy. The policy is to enhance, protect, and defend religious freedom. If that is done at the department and agency level rather than in a global executive order, it doesn't matter. They both have the force and rule of law.
Right.
And I think it will happen.
What do you make of the polls we're seeing? Politico did a poll. 69% of Americans support having contraceptives covered as part of health care. Is that going to be a problem?
No, I don't think so, because I think that if we do a good enough job educating people, that those kinds of issues are best resolved by doctors, by patients, insurers, and by employers at the market level rather than being imposed by the government. That's the best way to ensure, first of all, that you lower premiums, because that's been a big problem with Obamacare.
Yeah.
The problem with Obamacare was it took people who were uninsured and it tried to provide them with insurance with all kinds of mandates. That just drives up premiums. There are a lot of people who want contraception, but there are also a lot of people, either because of their stage of life or because of where they find themselves personally, they don't need or want contraception. Same with OBGYN coverage, same with mental health coverage. I mean, if we weigh down every policy with every single service that somebody might want, you're going to have premiums that are averaging what they're currently averaging, which is $7,000 for a family of four.
That's
People
crazy.
can't afford that.
That's
So I think the best way to do this is to allow private individuals in the marketplace to take care of it.
I want to shift gears. I want to talk about James Comey, former FBI chief,
Sure.
testifying on the Hill this week. Before he ever went to the Hill, he released his opening statement, and in it he said the president told him, "I need loyalty." And then he asked him about the investigation into General Michael Flynn, and he said, "Why don't we let it go? Maybe you could find a way to let it go." Your thoughts on this? Will this damn this investigation? Will this make the Trump agenda harder to move, given what we've been seeing in recent weeks here on the Hill?
I don't think so. I saw and also read the testimony, and I don't see any evidence that the former FBI director, who I believe, by the way, is an outstanding public servant. He's been a man who has really served this country in many admirable and great ways. I'm sorry that his service ended the way it did, and I'm sorry that there was this fissure between he and the president. But the fact is that he does not allege that the president obstructed justice. He felt that there were some things that occurred that made him uncomfortable, that he felt were inappropriate.
Yeah.
But the deputy director of the FBI, who was his number two, has testified under oath that nobody did anything to impede or interfere or inhibit this investigation. Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, has testified the same. All the president was saying was, look, am I under investigation?
Yeah.
The answer was no. There's no allegation, there's no charge that he was ever doing anything to advance Russian interests. Comey offered that proactively in their first meeting on January the 6th of this year. And the second question on Flynn was, this was a guy who had been fired. Yeah. He had lost his job, and all Trump was essentially saying was, as an act of compassion, this guy suffered enough. You know, do we really have to put him through the grinder? But there were never any kind of steps taken by the White House, by anybody at the Department of Justice, or anybody to impede that investigation.
Do you find it curious that Comey saw fit to memorialize these conversations? And by his own admission, he'd never done this before on the two occasions he spoke to President Obama, to memorialize these and not, according to the statute, report this to the Attorney General, who he's answerable to.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he do that if there was really a problem or if something was amiss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important question, because I think if there was, first of all, Comey doesn't allege that there was an attempt to obstruct justice. If there isn't an attempt to obstruct justice, then the only reason to memorialize the conversation is not a legal or constitutional one. It is for his own recollection and, frankly, self-protection.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, I think that's why he did it.
That's what he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about the slow walk of this legislative agenda? The Trump team has sent up incredible trial balloons on infrastructure, budget, tax cuts. We're getting very little movement on the Hill. To what do you attribute that, and what are your members telling you? They've got to be upset with the progress.
Well, I think some of them are frustrated, but I'm not. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective.
You've watched the sausage being made before, Ralph.
This is not my first rodeo, Raymond, and I was actually sitting in the gallery of the House of Representatives in, if memory serves me, late July or early August of 1981, when the House of Representatives passed the Reagan tax cut. Now, that means that the Senate didn't pass it until after that.
Right.
That was August of 81, okay? And you had a Republican Senate. You did not have a Republican House, but you had enough blue dog Democrats. That tax cut passed by a huge margin in the House. Much more than Trump's, replacement of Obamacare did, which was 217.
Right.
So I think you've got a polarized environment. The Democrats have decided, they're going to vote against declaring next month National Sunflower Month if Donald Trump's name is on it. So you got to do everything with only Republican votes. And I think people have got to recognize that it's better to get it right than get it done quickly. I want to insert a word of caution here. The Democrats had this same issue in 2009. They had pent-up desires by their base. Get it done now. We've suffered for 8 years under George W. Bush. They passed that stimulus so fast the ink hadn't even dried.
Yeah.
And the result was $1 trillion, a lot of which went down a rat hole, and it didn't really fix the problem. And then they rushed the Obamacare bill through the House. They also rushed cap and trade and climate change through the House. And they ended up not really getting a lot of those right. So I would say, let's everybody take a deep breath. I'll be concerned if we don't get the tax cut and Obamacare repeal and replace done this calendar year, and not until.
Okay.
Let's get it right.
Ralph Reed, thanks so much. We
Raymond,
hope to see
good
you
to see
again
you.
soon. Always a pleasure. You can find out more about Ralph and the work of the Faith and Freedom Coalition at ffcoalition.com.